All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope you are well. Hope you are doing fine. I am sharing this over to the different stations that we have, all of the different social media settings that we have. Thank you so very much for checking in. Thank you so very much for being a part of this Sunday's conversation. I am your host, ToneDuncan. I am looking forward to starting with you any moment now. I want you to like, I want you to comment, and I want you to share. Be a part of the conversation here. I am excited to have you, and I am looking forward to having you speak with me today on our show. Ruth, what's going on? What's happening? Hope you are well. I want to make sure that we can get this out to everybody. So just give me a quick second here. Thank you so very much. Remember, I want you to like, I want you to comment, I want you to share, I want you to help us to get this going. What's happening to my very beautiful wife, Shay, in the house? Always glad to have my show start with you. So thank you very much. All right, you guys, just a little bit of a delay here as we try to get this stuff going on. Let's get this moving. Excuse me. All right. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. All right. Awesome. All right, you guys. So here's what today's conversation about. Today's conversation is about being able to gain the strength of your relationship. Being able to gain the strength of your relationship with God. But at the same time, being able to remove yourself from all of the constraints of a worldly religion. So I'll say this again. Worldly religions are entities that try to control your walk with the spiritual creator. So what we try to do here every Sunday, 1 o'clock Chicago time, is really try to separate the religious discourse from the spiritual walk that has allowed us to know who we truly are. You know, as a truth seeker, spiritual truth has to be at the greatest core of wisdom, because it's through that knowledge that we get our understanding of purpose and our understanding of being. I want you to take this time right now. I need you to just like, comment, and share. See, by doing these things, by just saying hello, by putting the like button up, by sharing the video, it expands our conversation and allows us to talk to more people. You know, one of the things that I want to talk to you about today is how awesome it is, how truly awesome it is to be able to share Father's Day with you. You know, so many of us, you know, we have our personal particulars about fatherhood and about the men who are responsible for fatherhood. You know, I will say this because I think it's important for me to point out, and I think it's so very important for us to be able to sit here and conversate. Like all things in life, fatherhood is a path. It's not a destination. You know, you are constantly trying to improve who you are as a father. You're trying to constantly improve who you are as a man, and you are more importantly trying to improve who you are as a manifestation of the Most High. You know, so I always say fatherhood is an ever-evolving escalation to being the man that you want to be to the people who mean the most to you. Raphael, what's going on? Lisa, what's happening? All my Facebook friends, all my social media friends. I'm talking Instagram, YouTube. I just want to say happy Father's Day to the men, because being a man is such a process of stereotype. I mean, When I deeply, deeply looked into what it meant to be a man, I realized there are so many cultural overtones. There are so many specific opinions. These opinions aren't even universal. They're just culturally and oftentimes community specific. So many times there's a belief that men aren't supposed to make mistakes, and if you do make a mistake, then you've lost your opportunity to be a father. I'm telling you right now that I don't care what situation you're in. I don't care what the circumstance of your relationship is with your child. It is time today for you to regain the confidence that you and your child were always meant to be in unison with each other. And what this personally means is that every single Father's Day, I think of how important it is. I think of how real it is for me to constantly try to build towards a better relationship with my children, because when it's all said and done, my children are a manifestation of me. I am a manifestation of my Father. We are manifestations of the Most High. And building a legacy of my lineage is naturally inclined in my life. Some of you may look and say, hey, if I have kids, fine. If I don't, fine. But some of you have known in your spirit that having a child was important to you since day one. And being a child and accepting childhood as one who is protected by the adult, and being, comforted, being hurt, all the different things that come about in being a child kind of create the father that you hope to be one day. Creates the parent, because it's not specific to men. It creates the parent that you want to be. So, when you go through things as a child, you quantify those things and they become part of your belief system. They become part of your identity. They become part of who you ultimately think you are. And so many of us, we raise our children based on the hardships and based on the personal circumstances of our childhood. And I don't necessarily know if that's good or bad, but I will tell you this. In our childhoods, we deeply rely on the guidance of our parents. And sometimes parents don't get it right. Sometimes parents are learning at the same time the child is learning. Because if you live this life long enough, you will know what it's like to learn. I say, and I want to say this specifically to you today, all of the men that are listening right now, I want to say to you how very important it is that you get on the opposite side of blame, that you get on the opposite side of guilt, that you get on the opposite side of remorse, and that you get on the opposite side of hopelessness. Listen, okay, I'll say this so you understand. We are constantly judging ourselves based on a forgive and non-forgive mindset. See, when you think of forgiving somebody, you think of right and wrong. When you think somebody's done wrong because it wasn't right and they must have been evil or had some hardship behind it, we don't get it. Fathers are constantly trying to evolve. Some fathers are less evolved than they want to be. Some are less evolved than we would like them to be. But every father is on a procession towards where they need to be. Today I hope that you can see empathy in your own life. I hope that you can feel the true pains of attempting to be the person that you're supposed to be and it not go the way you wanted it to. I'm hoping that you can see within your own life's struggles how at some point it was important for you to become better than you were and closer to who you wanted to be. So I'm going to say this to y'all. I'm going to start this off by saying, first and foremost, Happy Father's Day. And secondly, thank you, because we are all trying to be better fathers, even though we're never going to be as great as we would like to be. All right. So, all right, you guys, this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about finding God outside of religion. And finding God outside of religion is a very sticky conversation, because so many times we think that our religions are what create our relationships with God. We don't understand that our relationships with God are already intact when we first come out. You know, and so we spend our time, we spend so much of our childhood, you know, in some religious institution trying to figure it all out, right? And then one day we finally figure it out. One day we finally say, okay, I get it. I really do. All right, there is nothing inside of this that's going to get me to where I'm trying to go. Now, this is a tough conversation, right? Because it's in that conversation that you start to realize that I'm going to have to pursue a different path. See, it's in that conversation that you realize that something that I am doing is leading me away from the way I originally was doing it. And so you start to study this, and you start to really give it some perspective, right? You start to wonder to yourself, okay, how do I create the kind of connection that I need with my spiritual growth and development? So where do we go from here? Well, it's in this moment that we start to shed the things that we feel deeply are not connecting us the way we need to be. You know, at some point, truth seekers realize that God is a force within the inside of us. It's not an outside thing. Those of you who have had an opportunity to sit with us and talk, truth seekers, every Sunday, 1 p.m. Chicago time, you know that what we talk about on Sundays is this innate connection to this Most High, the one we call God, the one that we create all the myths about. And I say myths not because they're all phony, because I believe that every one of them are a learning experience. I believe every single story has the opportunity for us to gain wisdom. May not always be the conventional way, though. So what I'm saying by that is I'm saying it may not be, you know, you read it word for word and take it verbatim and then now you get wisdom. See, sometimes it's about listening deeply, not with your ears and not with your brain, but with your spirit. It's within this listening that you get the true lesson. See, because when you quiet the mind, the spirit teaches you. And this is the reason why I believe the story where Jesus says, my sheep know my voice and the strangers they will not follow, was teaching those who were inclined to know that when you deeply listen, not to yourself, but to the deeper self, the self that you associate with the divine, when you listen that deeply, you hear an honesty and a truth that's beyond reproach. So this is what I think we need when we step away and try and find the truth of what it is we are listening to. So today, the first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about how we can really start to build this relationship with the Most High. You know, one of the things that I think we have to start to do is we have to start to move away from mixing the old with the new. See, when I say mixing the old with the new, I'm saying realize something and really take this into your deeper psyche. when you have become enlightened, when you have moved past what you think you know, when you've moved away from the beginning teachings that got you to realize the truth that caused you to move away and to start to seek and to find in a deeper way. When you start to truly understand that what's needed is not here, but it's close, and you make this move, you're going to have to understand the two are not necessarily connected in the way you want it to be. See, the truth may inspire or help to craft the lie, but it's not always going to be very similar. See, you've got to stop trying to mix the old with the new. What I'm saying to you is you are going to have to stop trying to mix your religious teachings to your spiritual truth. And that's going to be hard. Because so many times you just want to kind of turn off your brain and just be guided by the teachings of an outside source. An outside source that you consider to be inspired by God. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you come to the crossroads of knowing that God and wrong are not coexisting correctly, and the harmony of doing something that's evil and corrupt and being blessed and anointed start to really conflict you, see, you are taught to turn off your brain and just roll through it, because that's faith. You know, but that's not faith. See, that's called blind faith. Blind faith, because the wisdom that enlightens us, the truth that's in your soul to guide you, is not what you rely on, but a blind faith. A faith in something that you want to believe, even though you know there's absolutely no reason to believe that it shall be in that way. You know, here's my issue, and I'll just be totally honest with you. We got to understand that the realities are more likely that the teachings will come in a different way. And that the teachings are going to show you as a person that the reality is your relationship with the Most High is crafted into your DNA. And that in order for you to build on that relationship, you have to move away from an outside connection. Outside meaning the rigors of a particular religion, a conduit that moves you through a group in order to get to the source. It's in this that we lose our awareness of self. We are all manifestations of the divine. But when I say this, what I'm really saying to you is something that's a little deeper than what your religious perspectives will allow you to believe. See, because in the old teachings of the Hebrews taught their people that they were the breath of the Creator. That this breath from the Creator is what was breathed into dirt, and thus came man. That's the spiritual indwellment of the earthly being, of the earthly dirt. See, this is what Adam is. See, because people don't understand this, but in its oldest Hebrew, Adam is plural for people from dirt. See, what I'm trying to tell you is, and again, you know, religion will only get you so far. But the reality is the relationship will get you a greater awareness of who you are, of what your purpose is. But sometimes in order for you to better understand, in order for you to fulfill the awareness it takes, to become closer to the one whom we call God, the one that all of the stories are about. No matter which God we're talking about, they're all specific stories that ultimately will teach you something. Some will teach you directly. Some will contradict what you know in order to teach you to follow not what you see, but what you spiritually are inclined to know the truth. And you love this too, because why I love it so much and why it's so awesome to me is that it starts to bring life to words that we were taught. It starts to bring reality to beliefs that we had no awareness of, though we were taught the words. When you walk by faith, you no longer need the physical, because you realize that the spiritual was all it was really ever about. So one of the things that we have to start to do is start to move away from the old platforms of what relationships with the enlightenment is. It's old platforms of what it means to be one with the Creator, and understanding our origin and what we were intended to do. I want to take a second out and say thank you so very much for checking us out every Sunday, 1 o'clock. It is the Sunday Conversation. I'm your host, ToneDuncan. We talk about things that are a little bit off the daily convo. We talk about spiritual relationships. We talk about what the essence of the relationship is all about, because the reality, and this is a truthful point, the reality is that when you understand who you are, you understand who the Most High is, and you understand what your purpose and the connection of the two really are. Let's enjoy this conversation together. Like, comment, share. Let's spend time here and really talk about what the reality is. One of the truths is that religions put you in the physical, whereas relationships put you in the spiritual. See, we have to stay out of the physical, because it's within the physical that we get caught up. See, our egos navigate the physical. And when we talk about egos, remember, we've talked about this a few times. Egos are truly a very simple thing. See, we all have beliefs on who we are. These beliefs are positive. These beliefs are negative. These beliefs are never true. They're almost always based in fear. And see, it's within that prism. It's within those contexts. It's within that vision that we see ourselves. And see, that is called our ego. We build an identity within these fear-based perceptions that were either imposed on us as children, things that we started to believe as we developed, or things that we still try to navigate through right now when we're in our flesh. See, but when we step away from these presuppositions, when we step away from these egoic conceptions, we move into the true self. And the true self, the deeper self, the real self, is our spiritual self. And I like to spend a little bit of time talking about that, because one of the things that we have to talk about when we discuss the spiritual self is what our motivation is to get closer to the Most High. So many of us, we don't realize this, but our motivations for our relationship and for the growth of that relationship are built on really shoddy steps. They're based on physical gain. They're based on fear. So many people do things right, not because they're wanting to do right, but because they're scared of doing wrong. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because some of us know that there have been times where we wanted to do something wrong, really wrong, but we said, you know what? The only reason I'm not going to do something wrong is because I don't want something wrong to happen to me. Believe it or not, even though that got you where you wanted to go, even though that got you where you were supposed to be, it didn't get you there using the thing that creates the confidence and awareness for our growth. What am I saying to you? What I'm saying to you is that when you act out of fear, that's ego. When you act out of love and generosity and care and kindness and offer the efficacy of what is right, when you step into that area, then we are working truly with the relationship building tools that the Most High has given us as manifestations on earth. So I always say, check your motivation. Check your purpose for what you do. Because we need to move away from this belief that we owe. See, whenever you do something simply because you owe, whenever you do something because your motivation is to try to somehow do good in a way that creates some form of credit, some form of equity, some form of value to ascend you higher. When there's a wealth accumulation of good so that you can advance in your heavenly reward, whenever there's a belief like that, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's not real. That's not possible. That completely contradicts the entire concept. See, because when we focus in on material gain, when we focus in on physical rewards, first off, our minds, every time we think about it, brings us back to the physical, because any form of greatness can only be established in a physical way. See, there's no way to show spiritual greatness in some quantified form because we don't know what that is. So anytime we think of greatness, we think of kingdoms. We think of gold, treasures, royalty. We think of physical worship. We can't truly consider what it is to have an excellence of spirituality without trying to quantify it into some form of a physical and corrupt manifestation. So I say to you, what is your motivation? Our motivation with our spiritual walk, with our desire to step more boldly in our tradition, is really about spirit connecting back with spirit. So I say to you, let's move away from the belief that somehow, you're a sinner, you're not worthy, and you have to, submit to this life of servitude because it's the only way that God will have mercy on you, and all this other belief that, somehow, it took the murder of a divine being in order for you to be, saved. Here's my question for you today. My question is, if you are a spiritual being, and we know nothing that happens to you on earth can actually be the death of the spiritual being, and we see that no spiritual being had to die in the spirit, then we realize the truth is we were never to die in the spirit. In our spirits, we are the Most High. We are the divine incarnation of spiritual manifestation of the one who created us. That might be deep for you to know, but it is all the truth. See, when you know who you are, then all of a sudden verses like the verse in your Bible that says, "Be ye perfect like your Father in heaven is perfect." And we all know heaven is in you and all around you, as the teacher taught. See, when you are able to listen to the truths, not with your brain, but with your spirit, and the discernment that comes to your mind, when you're out of your ego, is where we get our truth. But we have to know our motivation. What is your motivation? This is the question that I think we're compelled to ask ourselves on a daily basis. You know, we've talked about it before, but we'll talk about it again at another time. But I give you 5 tips to deepen your religious understanding. And that is, watch this, understanding that your religion is a conduit. It's not a destination. We have to be able to take what we learn and then live through the processes of enlightenment. But when you refine your search to a specific area, you miss so much of who and what you were intended to see. So I hope that you understand that when we look with the right motivation, we look as beings that were made perfectly, and that perfect is an achievable step because we are made with the divinity of the Creator inside of us. I know that's tough for so many of you to hear, because I know it sounds like you are supposed to be, sinners and worthless and not of the divine, because the divine is too amazing to be in you. But the reality is you missed it. See, the reality is once you truly understand that you were born with the perfection of the divine, then we can start to walk back there. But when you believe something that somebody else told somebody else that told you that you were not of the Creator and that you were just simply a creation, they misguided you, and that destroyed the strength of your awareness and your relationship to the true self, to the Creator, to that which we all come from. See, I was reading so many different verses that say the same exact thing. They all say the same thing. They say we need to re-understand our relationship to God. And if there was a more important part than this, I wouldn't know what it was. Because see, when you begin to realize your divine being, when you realize that your own teachings teach you that you were created through the divine breath of the Creator. See, when you get that, when you can navigate within that prism, then you begin to understand that you are an extension of that divine power. See, when you keep allowing religions that teach you that you are worthless, when you allow religions that teach you that perfection is outside of you and it's only through mercy and pity that it comes inside of you, you have lost your awareness of your true self. And this is what we're talking about today. This is the focus of building a relationship back to the Most High. I want you to like, I want you to comment, I want you to share, I want you to spend a little time with me today. But one of the things that I have to talk to you about is this relationship. See, when we build this relationship, by re-understanding who we are, we understand that the relationship takes place inside. See, a lot of our teachings have taught us that somehow the Holy Spirit comes inside of you. See, and I understand why they teach you this, because it's not inside of your ego. So the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit of truth, the true self, there's so many different ways of saying the same thing, but this same manifestation. It is not inside of your ego, yet it is inside of you. It is so deep, and I don't like to go deep, I'll stay shallow, Because there are truths that the truth seekers know when we connect to this. And that is that when you truly understand, you are not your ego, then you step outside of those fears, those negative beliefs, those thoughts that are wrong. You move towards the real truth. And what is the real truth? The real truth that you and the divine are one. The Creator created you with its creation, which was its energy, which was its manifestation of you and I and all of us. And we have to know ourselves. The ancient Egyptians had a saying that when you knew who you were, it is only then that you will know the Creator. I believe that when you move the religion away from the teachings of Buddha, that Buddha said the same thing. Krishna said the same thing. Jesus said the same thing. David said the same thing. See, I've studied all of them. They've all said the same thing. But we need to stop looking at ourselves as simply some sinful beings that constantly do wrong, and realize that you were never, ever going to perfect your being until you've experienced the tribulations, the mistakes, and the learning opportunities that come with them. And when you understand that, and you navigate your heart with a better spirit, a better truth, a better connection to what's not in your ego, but outside of your ego and in your spiritual self, then, and only then, will you understand who you are in relationship to the Most High. Because when you are in that connection, you don't know your end from that end. You move naturally as one energy. And this is how you know who you are. I want to say to you guys, thank you so much for checking me out. I've got a few more minutes here. I want you to like, I want you to comment, I want you to share, I want you to take part. I want you to be in on the conversation today. So today we're talking about how to regain our relationship without the confinements of anybody's religion. Now someone say, why does it matter? Because you and I both know, we all know that we are not, and I'll say this very simply, we are not the only ones who get it right. There are people who don't have your religious awareness that are deeply, deeply loving beings who deeply care about the oneness of God and the beauty and the manifestation of its creation. And we, knowing each other, are of this creation, of this energy, of this spirit, have to understand that it is through the heart that we are judged, not through some dogmatic process of tradition. You know? People don't understand this. You go off of everything your church says, but you have to understand, it's the church that sanctions slavery. You know, and there's no knock on the church. It's just telling you, stop deifying things that are not God. You already make your Bible, your Quran, your Upanishads, all your different books, your Bhagavad Gitas, you make all these divine, but they're not. They're where divinity, watch, they're where divinity is discussed. And the enlightened gain enlightenment. You see, they are not divine, but they reflect opportunities for divine uplifting. But when one truly understands this, when you get that, you understand there is no point in the day that you are not divinely connected and that you can't gain wisdom in that very moment, no matter what you're looking at. When your heart, when your spirit, when your mind is engaged in the divine. Whatever you see is teaching. You know, the Buddhists, they're amazing with that. They do things like look at a piece of broken glass, a piece of eroded stone, and they see divine wisdom. And they teach and celebrate the awareness of the divine process right there in front of us. You know, and this takes us out of our egos, and we realize there's something more powerful than that which we're constantly worried about. You know, the physical us. You know, because we spend so much of our lives just studying the wrong stuff going on in our physical day-to-day world. We don't work as hard on our spiritual selves because we're constantly thinking about how we're going to pay the rent, how we're going to buy this car, how we're going to buy this house, how we're going to, you know, start this new job, how we're going to get this better pay, how we're going to get this vacation, how we're going to get this, all this physical worldliness. And we never really get the chance to just build the relationship, you know, the relationship. So I say that to you guys because, you know, when we understand this truth, we can move away from the paths that involve any form of a religion as an exclusive approach, and use any religion you want, but use it respecting the fact that it is not the destination, and it is only one path towards the being you seek that is greater than any words or thought that you could have right now. See, we come with this arrogance that we know everything, that we already know how things should be perceived. I'll say this again. Now watch this. I know this is tough, but watch this. We come to the table with this arrogance that we already know what God is, what God's will is, exactly what we're supposed to do, and that's the end of it. Because, see, religion gives you the arrogance of closed-mindedness when mishandled. But a true God-based, spiritual development-based tradition that you call religion, when done right, it will set you towards the divine. But it will also tell you it is not the divine, and that at some point you'll have to let it go. And then you understand, because it's tough. It's tough trying to make right out of things that you know ultimately are not right. See, like for instance, like when people tell you about sin and about temptation, you know what blows my mind, what blows my mind is that people honestly think that sin and that evil is some outside force. They actually think that evil comes into you. They actually think that the actions of the individual are an outside force. And it's okay if that's what you believe, but I'm going to tell you something. Here's a rule. If somebody else did it, then it's on them, not on you. But if it's on you, then you have to have a way to improve yourself. You have to have a way to think deeply and to grow from it. And this is the way the truth is. Okay, because truth is something you grow from. When you make a mistake, first off, you made the mistake. When you do something that you call sin, you navigated a course that did not reap the benefits you were hoping to get. So for this reason, you made a decision that you later didn't want to make. You ended up changing your mind. You repented. That's what a repenting is. When you change your mind and go a different way. When you repent, you grow. When you grow, you are now knowledgeable, you know. See, we have to understand that mistakes are the process that we learn from. And that it's uncomfortable decisions that we get the greatest amount of experience and awareness from. You have to be able to look at yourself and know that you are not your mistakes. When you do well, you have to be able to look at yourself and know you are not your successes. You are not any. You are. And that's hard to understand. You are not the action. Okay? You are the actor. All right? You are not the physical person. You are the spiritual manifestation that is watching and learning and becoming more and more. This is some deep stuff for some of us. But the reality is, if you don't have the ability to go this deep, then you're in church somewhere. You're not really trying to go past that. And I respect that. I have no problem with that. But some of us, we have to understand that this is deeper than that. Right? This is deeper than where the pastor can go. And a lot of pastors know, because I know this. I talk to them. I talk to them often. But one of the things about taking an oath to uphold a particular religious perspective is to let go of your own personal beliefs, to let go of your own personal journey, your own personal path, and just to move forward in the particular tradition that you're ordained in. And you know, for them, they took an oath, they took an agreement, they've taken a salary, they've become earnest income creators for a particular denomination. And so they're not going to navigate you away from that, because that's not what they're paid to do. But see, I have no pay. And I have already learned that the things that we call religions are springboards that move us to our awareness. You can always learn from every religion. But the first thing you have to learn is that the religion is not a relationship. And most importantly, it is not the one you seek. It is a creation created by people. And it is not the creator of the people. You know? And once you kind of do that, then you can let go of the, you're no longer homophobic. You are no longer judgmental. You no longer, expect people to follow your beliefs. You no longer have expectations on the actions of other people, because you allow them to be who they are, and you take them for who they are, and you understand that all of us are walking this path towards enlightenment. Some of you believe that, when you die, whatever your total, amount of mistakes were, whether or not you took Jesus to be your Lord and Savior, whether or not you profess Muhammad to be the prophet of Allah, whether or not, you were a devout Christian, whatever your deal is, whatever your thought is, at some point you will realize that the heart is what was ever in play. Because the heart is the compass of the spirit. And where your heart is what really determines who you are. And temptation is the distortment of the heart. And when you start to work on why we are tempted, and start to really seek deeply to find the truth on why certain things tempt us, when you start to do that, then, and I'm honest with you, then you realize temptation is not what you want it to be, but what you need it to be to grow, to learn, and to become wiser and more one with the truth. Lose the judgmental stuff. We got to. And then we start to understand where we are as people. And I'm going to let you go in a couple seconds here. But the reality is, and I'm going to say this so that there's no misunderstanding today, the reality is that you can never know the power of the Creator as long as you think you know. See, when you let go of thinking you know, you begin to learn. See, all of your so-called knowledge is in your brain, but your wisdom is when you move away and you become one with truth. And that truth is that spiritual truth, the only truth there really ever was. You know, I hope that today wasn't so deep that I lost you, but, you know, every now and again I just say, you know, who's really there? Who really hears me? And who understands that when you truly seek, you're going to find yourself way out the limits. You know, nobody understands what it meant to be rejected by the Jews in the teachings of the book of Jesus, these different writings. See, whether or not you look at these writings as historically correct or not, is, to me, it's irrelevant, because first off, there's wisdom in the teachings, but the spirituality is in the one reading it. See, this is what people don't get. No, you will never get an outside force to give the inside reward you need. No, not at all. But what it does is it gives you visual enlightenment. And so I read all these different books and I see the enlightenment that's there. You know, I read the Quran and I read various things that are highly, highly spiritually, you know, wonderful. I read the Bhagavad Gitas and the same thing, amazingly spiritual writings in certain parts. I read, you know, the Upanishads, and man, it's amazing. I read the ancient Egyptian writings. I read all of the different writings, and what I find more amazing than anything else is that wisdom is letting go of the ego and focusing in on who you are and allowing the spiritual connection to be that which navigates you to your truth. Hey, until next week, you guys, this is your boy, ToneDuncan. You know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show. I'd like you to comment. If you don't mind, I'd like you to share this. Take a second and go through it. It was a little bit deep, but it's what we do. Happy Father's Day again, and hope y'all have the greatest enjoyment as you seek the truth. Peace.